Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, my name is Debbie Horovitch, and I'm so excited. Today we're going to be talking to a woman who has 20 plus years in the international publishing industry. She's based in Frankfurt, Germany, and has clients around the world. Andrea Schmitz. In recent years, she's who we're talking to today. In recent years, she's worked with a client even who was a best-selling author by the time he came to her, was recognized by the Glazer Kennedy Marketer of the Year Awards, but he still needed to improve some of his authority within his own marketplace. And after working with Andrea, using her Hangout curation formula to create his book publishing project, he's even been able to successfully bring his book personally to Donald Trump for consideration. So I'm really excited to be able to speak with Andrea today because she has these insights into the marketing opportunities for businesses that most people can't see, that can open up doors to the people that you really, really want to use. Hangout curation formula is a great approach, and it's something that she's had a lot of success with. It creates very viable and successful content marketing for brands. But since then, even through exploring Hangout curation formula, she's even discovered a new way of connecting with audiences through adult coloring books. She's got a new brand called Innovators within her business, and it does bring adult coloring books to marketers and to businesses as an opportunity for them to continue to connect with their audiences. I personally know that adult coloring books are a huge consumer trend this year, but myself as well, I've seen very few businesses are really using it. And the reason why I'm so excited to speak with Andrea today is because she can share with us why. So welcome, Andrea. I'm so happy that you're here today.
Well, thank you for having me, Debbie. I really look forward to digging into, coloring. One question, if I were to put a box of crayons right in front of you, no, I'm not even going to put them in front of you. I'm just going to tell you about the raspberry red and the mellow yellow colors. You remember them in Crayola? When I'm talking to you about this right now, can you smell them?
I can certainly see them. Yeah, I can smell the wax crayons.
Can you remember the smell? And that's one of the powerful elements that we as adults don't even realize when we're talking about coloring, but coloring pulls us into a realm, and it's taking a whole history of ourselves and brings it together. And this is a very, very powerful impact that we can use in the marketing and in the publishing world. And so I'm really excited to be here to talk about how coloring books can be a great, great connecting factor in your business and growing your actual audience and binding your audience closer to you in ways that you never anticipated.
Okay, so let's talk about it, because I know a lot of the people who are listening are really thinking, yeah, but I have not seen adult coloring books. Like, what are you talking about, adult coloring books?
I promise the listeners today that they will go out from this show and they will see coloring books everywhere. In April of this year, of 2015, and the Washington Post posted an article, and I'm just going to read the first sentence from their article that they posted. The number 1 and number 2 best-selling books on Amazon right now of all titles out there are coloring books for adults. And their next sentence is, let that sink in for a minute. The thing is that we don't necessarily at face value, when we talk about that, we're just like, you got to be kidding me. That's kids' play. It's child's play. But if we look at our lives today and how crazy they are, it's actually turning into a craze that's filling a need that we have abandoned when we've taken the online world and our handy, happy
mobile phones,
mobile lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
And it's bringing us a form of digital detoxing. So that's one side of it. And that's what the consumer has. They have this digital detox opportunity to actually sit down. When I look at if you look at young people who are going through architecture school today compared to people who studied architecture 10 years, 20 years ago or 30 years ago before AutoCAD became a huge thing, the young people today, they are all doing everything digitally, which is wonderful. But if you put them out in the field and say, what can we actually put on this physical piece of property? They have a hard time grasping it because they're not used to actually going out and seeing things in the field. I know this from landscape architecture, that this is to be true, and that landscape architects are sitting there going like, we need people who have this tactile experience again. And so the digital age has been fantastic and phenomenal, have created opportunities, especially in publishing, that independent publishers did not have 5 years ago. And I can tell you about that. I've been living in Germany. 20 years ago, I couldn't even order an English book. And today I can get an English book and it's going to be here in my house within 3 days. Whereas 10 years ago, if I ordered an English book, they were actually ordering them from the United States from 4 weeks to get here. So I've even seen in that realm, in the publishing realm, the incredible advancements of it. And we know how impactful publishing was when Gutenberg Press came about. It was a shift.
Revolutionized the world.
Absolutely. And so we are at the cusp of that again with our digital publishing on the one hand and the speed of information that comes. But the challenges that come with us is that we get overdrive. And so the coloring books allow us the digital detox. But the real interesting thing comes to it is when we apply that to marketing and apply that to actually growing your business as we work with business owners. And that's the real interesting thing that we want to talk about. So you mentioned when we started, the Hangout curation formula, and the Hangout curation formula does two things for us. There are 3 rules that Blair Warren brings in his book, The Forbidden Keys to Persuasion. And these 3 tendencies that he brings or that he presents are that people resist unwelcome attempts to persuade them. People can't resist what they can't detect. And the third one is people sometimes believe what they're told, but they never doubt what they conclude. The Hangout curation formula, which I've been working with over the past 5 years and developed and have used successfully with business owners, as you've mentioned in the introduction, it starts on 1 and 3 of these tendencies. Namely, people resist unwelcome attempts to persuade them. It totally circumvents that. And people sometimes believe what they're told, but never doubt what they conclude. It totally supports that because the Hangout curation formula works with talking with industry leaders that we want to garnish their authority and sort of rub off their name against our name. It's part of, so it's like a newsjacking
social
kind of
and
concept.
Political capital is being borrowed and given and exchanged. I myself am a big user of Google Plus Hangouts on Air and have created a program as well. So I absolutely agree. Exactly. And that's extremely powerful. And you can use that even today. But what the one key element that's missing that Blair Warren brings out in his book is that people can't resist what they can't detect. Here's the thing. We are dealing with savvy markets. The target audience that we're going for, they're savvy. They've been bombarded. As the digital age explodes in front of us in our lifetime, we're getting more savvy and just sort of, sidestepping those marketing messages to the left and the right and saying, I see it, my bullshit. Oh, excuse me. my BS detector's up. I'm just going to circumvent that. I'm going to circumvent that. But we can only take in so many marketing messages in a day. So we naturally just ignore everything.
Exactly. So we
that
have
is beyond.
We have a Teflon personality. Nothing sticks, right? It just slides right off. So how do we incorporate this? We can't resist what we can't detect. And that's where I started going back to my roots in publishing, which is in the nonprofit realm, which is in philanthropic, which is in being agents of change in society's woes and challenges that we have. That's where I started out 15, 20 years ago, and bringing that back to the forefront of my work, because I've been doing a lot of work with business owners, but I just, sometimes you want to get back to that heart of, where you're at.
Absolutely.
And Innovator has allowed me to do that because it allows me to touch people in that core where they think back to their childhood. If you remember, you're just thinking of crayons, you remember that 64 box that had a little crayon sharpener in the back of it, right? As a kid, and crayon coloring, or even just if you think of, I remember when I went to school, they had pencil, what do you call it, sharpeners. They were attached somewhere near the chalkboard. Well, even just think of that, chalkboards aren't existent in school classrooms where my kids go to today.
Really?
They don't, but yeah. So, and you remember, yeah, things are changing, right? When
I haven't been into a school classroom in quite some time. I don't have children myself, so
here's our society, Debbie. When we grew up, the phone was attached to a wall.
Yes.
The teacher scratched on a chalkboard, and there was chalk dust.
Yes.
I mean, if you think about it, you can remember, or you maybe taste it in your mouth, that chalky feeling.
Absolutely.
So these are things that we associate with, and these are the markets we're going after. You know, an 18-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old that's in school, most of us aren't marketing to them because they don't have any money. So you're marketing to the people who went to school who still had chalk. Who still had so there's the chalkboards, there's the pencil shavings. Remember standing in the back of the room, shaving your pencil? Exactly. So
smell of the wood.
So coloring allows us to take that digital detoxing, but it combines other things like the memories of our childhood, because we don't sharpen pencils anymore unless we're sitting down to color. We don't pull out crayons unless we have young children and we're crayon and coloring with them. Chalk, it doesn't happen, and chalk we don't usually use in our coloring books anyway. But the point is that we're touching on part of our history of who we are. But also we're given templates with the coloring book that allow us to bring our creativity to it. And what's happening in the process of me giving you a coloring book is that I'm giving you part of myself, giving you part of my creative design, and you are bringing part of your creative genius to that. And while you're doing that, you're not online, you're not typing, you're actually physically moving your body. You're relaxing, you're focusing, and you're calling up, if you're sharpening pencils, you're calling up just pastime memories of your childhood, of a day that was, in your childhood, you weren't thinking of bills that had to be paid. You weren't thinking of business proposals that had to be written. You weren't thinking of the stress that you might be having with your spouse or with your teenagers or with your boss or with whatever. You had probably issues of your own as a child. We all have issues, but nothing to the degree of what we're going through now. And it allows us to suspend reality that we're experiencing at this moment and focus fully on the moment of coloring.
Okay. So I get it. So people benefit. It's a relaxing activity that is not connected to the internet. There's no distraction. It uses your brain in different ways. You don't have to be artistic or experienced or really like super creative, because there's the foundation there for you and the encouragement there for you. And it's just a matter of using different parts of your brain. But how does that connect in marketing?
Okay, so what we have there is, first of all, we have a state of mind that we're able to implement. We're able to conjure that up. And if we use that in our marketing, for example, I use that with authors as a creative way to get to another space where they're just to relax and get to there. It's allowing me to be able to speak to the authors in a completely different way. We have a trust basis. We have a creative basis that we've been working on together. My designs, your colors, we have melted together. We have been creative together. And that's a very powerful bond that's being built there. And as a marketer, excuse me, my screen just left me. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So as a marketer, we're able to connect with the reader or the colorer or the target audience in a completely different way that any kind of a book that we would publish otherwise cannot allow us to do. It's two creative souls touching each other, and so we see this also with people who use fiction as a way to create a message to bring it towards the world. So a lot of movies that have a statement to be made, or poetry, for example, touches us in a different way. Music is a very very big benefactor of this. But it's very hard for me to sell music to allow you to participate in that music in the way that you participate in coloring. That coloring is I give you something, but you give me something back, or you give the book back something. You actually physically do something to the book to make it your own. And when you're doing this, we start to touch in on the second tendency that Blair Warren was talking about, that people can't resist what they can't detect. They don't detect at that moment that they're actually bonding with the author of the book. They're just bonding with them. They're bonding with themselves in that moment. They're totally not.
So how does? Sorry, go ahead. My brain is exploding as you're talking.
they're not seeing. They're not seeing that the relationship that is being built there, but the relationship is being built there. And so at that point, we can move in and say, and build out the relationship from there. So I create coloring books for CEOs. I create coloring books for businesses to actually say, in our business environment, we use this, not as a selling tool to sell outside of the business. So let's say, give me an industry. Let's say I'm a caterer, and and I pass out these coloring books to my cooking team, to my driving team, to people who do all kinds of stuff that are attached to my business, because not everybody's going to be chopping onions, but some will, right? So everybody's, and that's the one combining factor. And it allows us also to combine people with completely different physical levels. You know how businesses actually also do things like they'll say, we're going to have one business day, we're all going to go bungee jumping together, right? So the woman with the pacemaker that's just happy she has a job is just like, to hell, I'm not doing that. Forget it, right? It allows us a completely different way to do it. And the funny thing is
everyone can participate in.
And we're two females talking here. And this is one of the things that when I do start talking about it, some men sit there and say, like, yeah, right, I'm going to sit down and draw. But you would be amazed at how many men really, when they're challenged to sit down for a moment, really sit down and they dig it. They're just like, oh my gosh, can we do this again? When can we do this again? Once they get to that moment where they suspend their own
judgment,
their own preconceived notions of what guys do and what guys don't do,
what's masculine,
they fully embrace it and fully enjoy it, and also realize that they're not losing any of their masculinity or
their adultness or their position, their
authority, exactly, and or leadership or whatever. And it turns into, and the thing is that we're discovering also is really, you can have minimal dose of 2 minutes of coloring. This does not have to be like a half hour, whatever. And you don't have to finish any of the things. But what we're using these also in high stress business situations where you just have engagement after engagement after engagement. And the only time that you've had beforehand to sort of escape from that might be to hop on the internet and surf YouTube or buy something on Amazon or something like that. Whereas now you can just sort of at your desk before you rush off to the next meeting in 10 minutes, pull out 3 colors, pull out that one page that you started 3 weeks ago and just color a little bit more. There's no more stress for you. There's nobody coming along to give you a grade.
No deadline.
There's no deadline and there's no right or wrong. You can color outside of the lines if you want to.
Absolutely.
That's all allowed.
You can leave it unfinished forever. You can throw it away.
Exactly. You can crumple it up and so we're using it in the business realm like this, or I'm bringing it into the business realm, and it's helping a lot of especially high tech or high intense business people who just need to have one high stress. Yeah, exactly. One moment step out there. And I'm involved with the international community here. We do have a lot of people coming from all over the world, some of the best coming here to Frankfurt to do various things. We have what do we have in Frankfurt? We have the European Central Bank. We got a lot of people who've got a lot of decisions to make. If you know what's going on in Europe, the United States, Canada, they're all of our Western civilization countries are having some pretty heavy issues that they have to deal with. And sometimes, they're actually got meetings going till well past midnight. The stress level is high. And this is one moment to be able to say, okay, they can't just go out for a half an hour walk in the park. As much as we'd like to give that to them, right?
Doodling is healthy.
Exactly.
And we know that doodling is healthy. Listen, I have a couple of more questions that I want to ask you. One thing that I really want to ask, and that I struggle with myself as a business owner, is how do I express my business and my brand in a coloring book? If I'm gonna publish an adult coloring book for purpose in my business, how do I make it personal?
That's a really good question. I'm not quite sure. Can you define the question a bit differently, or
Well, what if I come to you? Regardless, if I'm a business owner, or I'm a business marketer, or I've got a company, like say I am managing a website development company.
Mhm.
So we've got 80 different clients on the go at all times. We've got 50 plus employees, and we're super stressed out, and we're working at our computers all the time. I want to publish an adult coloring book for my staff to allow them something to step away from their computers and decompress.
Mhm.
And maybe help their creativity when they're in meetings and bonding and things like that. How do we make an
Mhm.
appropriate coloring book for how do we personalize it and customize it so that it makes sense for us and is not like, why don't I just go buy those top 1 and 2 coloring books that already exist?
Okay, and
Why do I need to publish something?
perfect question. Two elements that come into that. First of all, you've discussed a great scenario that a web building company. So if we're dealing with a web building company, we're dealing with HTML, we're dealing with ones and zeros, we're dealing with a very clear-cut world of how things work, but high frustration, quick turnaround, very high client demands, and that if a space, comma, or dot is missing, complete havoc. So there's a great attention that needs to be paid, but it's very linear and it's very logical that they're doing with. And so in these kind of cases, we look at and we work with the companies and say, what's the actual day-to-day work look like for you guys? Is it more of a creative work, or is it more of a website design is also creative work, but we have the skeleton, we have the HTML and so on and so forth that makes it very clear cut. So the user sees something very creative, but the actual person writing the code behind it is very, very linear and very straightforward. And we combine then elements that either bring in more creative or more chaos or more order, depending on the actual stress that is being brought up in the business. So for the web company, I would actually take more chaos. I would take a very intricate, off-centered mandala approach as opposed to a garden.
Right.
Right.
So something very geometric.
Something geometric,
and detailed and complex,
so that they don't necessarily see right off the gate where it's going. So they just sit there and say, "Okay, I'm just going to color. I'm going to color," and then out of this chaos, they discover the patterns and create the patterns, and then they're able to color it in more. And that's just tapping into their digital detoxing, tapping into their creative energy and their understanding of order from deep within, and allowing them to bring that through to their work. Whereas a completely different business might have then, for example, what was the European Central Bank standing there? They are making decisions that are financial number crunchers and so on and so forth. They're sitting in, and I know exactly what the building looks like. I've been there, right? This huge steel building, just like downtown anywhere, basically. And to get out during the daytime while the sun is still shining, to see the world, to hear the birds, to see the trees as they change throughout the seasons. This is going to be more of a nature-bound book that I would approach. And of course, I would do different birds. I would do different trees in the Frankfurt area than I would do in Washington or elsewhere. So I'm going to help the people pull up what they have in their own immediate area. Not to the extent of frustrating them, but to the extent of connecting them with their world and their reality and allowing them to just decompress in that moment, however many, moments that is.
Okay. Tell me about how long does it take if someone who's listening today, really wants to go through this process?
It takes about 6 weeks, really from start to finish, and that's including interviews at the beginning to say, okay, what are the actual pain points? what are the needs, where then we go through an interview process, and then we go to the design table, and I go to the design table and design for you. And then right through to publishing into, proof and then publishing process is about 6 weeks. Can take a bit longer. If we're talking a larger project or 2 or 3 books, obviously will take longer. But once we have a basic skeleton and we know what's working and what's going really well, then success, like books that follow after that, become less incumbent and much easier to pull together. So that's about basically the process of where we are. So you can have, before Christmas, the Christmas stress hits you, you can have a stress reliever for your year-end push within your business, for example. It's a relatively quick
fantastic
thing to have.
To actually take us through this holiday season.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect timing. Very good. So is there anything else that we need to talk about today? I think we really pulled apart the onion.
Yeah, I think the final to wrap up, I think you need to just understand that when people have suspended themselves, their preconceived notions of what should be happening, through engaging and totally engaging and focusing on something like coloring, which is pleasurable, then they are able to come back to you and hear the other messages that you have. So in the corporate world, especially if you're the CEO, if you're able to put this forth as an example, your leadership from that point on to that group of people who've been using your coloring book it's much more congruent, a lot less stressful, just in the communication amongst yourselves. Obviously, the business stresses, whatever they are, they're still going to be there, but your capacity to deal with that and to lead through that have changed through the bonding experience that you didn't even detect was going to happen. That's the second factor that is in the forbidden keys to persuasion. That bonding factor, which we send our leaders off for weekend retreats so they learn how to do it. It's actually as simple as getting a coloring book, and that touches me differently than you differently than everybody else out there differently. Everybody brings their own unique individuality to those coloring books, and they complete the story for you, and they come back to you with a completely different relationship than they left when they took the book to begin with.
I think that's so important. I think I'm really excited, like I said, that we had the opportunity to speak this morning, and to dive into how it can impact various businesses, and marketing, and even, just the people who are using them and people who are being introduced to this trend. I think it's not just a superficial or superfluous trend that is occurring within pop culture. It's actually something that allows us as human beings to recognize that we've been changing ourselves with as much technology and the digital involvements that we have. I think that this is something that helps bring us back to our creativity and to our ability to negotiate through situations.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So tell our listeners where they can find out more information about you.
Yes, at inkov, inkov.at /innovations. inkov.at /innovations, and give me a shout out when you come, and I'll say hello. And so thankful for you listening today. And I think at inkov.at /innovations, you can download 1 or 2 examples of different kinds of coloring sheets to see exactly what we're talking about here.
Awesome. So you do have some coloring sheets to download on those pages, is what you're saying. Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you everyone for tuning in and listening. And we'll be back soon.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.